Do you really think, these considerations taken into mind, that the 70s disproves the efficacy of affirmative action?
I think that when one makes a profound change in a society, arousing enormous passions across the board, that the burden of proof should be on those who think that this is beneficial. Because I have been listening very carefully and have yet to hear the benefit to disadvantaged blacks that has been empirically discovered after affirmative action.
Well, how quickly do you expect the changes?
At the University of California at Berkeley, for example, where the entering freshman class has been described as, quote, wonderfully diverse, unquote, because the, quote, class closely reflects the actual ethnic distribution of California high school students. These are your words. More than 70% of black students fail to graduate.
Yes.
Why?
Because they're mismatched with Berkeley. That is, these students, the average black student at Berkeley is above the national average on test scores. It's just that the average white student is further above the national average, and the average Asian student further above than the white students. And so in that atmosphere, these students who have every qualification to succeed are artificially turned into failures. And the only beneficiary of that is the University of California at Berkeley. Because what they've effectively done is rented these bodies for window dressing for a few years. And then when they're through with them, they're put aside. A new bunch of bodies are brought in.
You told them that?
Oh, yes.
And what do they say to you?
Oh, different things. I remember one fellow saying, "Oh, Tom, I'm just a little guy. I can't do anything about this," which, you know, wonderful. But the people who really have the influence are not the people I talk with. Those people know exactly what they're doing. There's another group, I guess, that benefits from this. You have an establishment there, a black studies establishment, who needs students to be in their classrooms, and these students serve those purposes. People who have political movements have people they can mobilize for those movements while those students are there. It's very much like what happens in athletics. That you have students who come in, as long as they can score touchdowns, the coach is happy. The fact that these students don't graduate is not the coach's problem. His problem is how to hold on to his six-figure salary and his job. And the students have to be sacrificed, then they are sacrificed.
Let's take it first from the student standpoint. Of 312 black students entering Berkeley in 1987, all were admitted under affirmative action. You say that 70% of those failed to graduate. What would you tell those students to do under the circumstances, knowing that statistic?
I would tell them what I've told students in general of all races to do, which is to go to schools that match your educational capabilities at the time. Because you need to be matched with a school. You shouldn't try to go to where the glitzy name is or what have you. Now, unfortunately, many of the minority students have such low income that they must go to wherever the money is. And the money is disproportionately at the kinds of schools that they will find very, very difficult to graduate from.
All right, let's take it from the standpoint of the school. You're at the school and you want to do good. You say it doesn't work. What would you tell the school to do?
To admit students on the basis of their qualifications.
But what happens if they come up and statistically they have nothing close to the population?
Well, they won't have anything at the top level. But we have more than 3,000 colleges and universities in this country. Every human being that's not severely mentally retarded is perfectly qualified to be at one of those institutions. I mean, there are institutions where if you can fill out the application form, you're qualified to do the work. And there are others where if you're not in the top 1 or 2%, your chances of making it are extremely slim. And it's precisely these second places that they want to send black students, that they don't send white students of the same level of ability. And it's not at all surprising that they had to run into the academic problems they do. Let me give you another example. It's not in the book. At MIT, the average black student is at the top 10% nationwide in mathematics, and in the bottom 10% at MIT. And 1/4 of them don't make it. Now, when you realize how few black students at that level, to lose 1/4 of them, you can't afford that. I think there's another larger loss that you have. You have the kid who goes to a top-level school, and he wants to be a chemist or whatever. And now he gets there and he finds he cannot learn chemistry as it's taught at that school. Does not mean he can't learn chemistry. It means that they have very high-pressure students. They can teach this stuff at a very fast rate, skipping on explanations, skipping over steps in the mathematics, and these students will all pick that up as they go along. He may find that he can't keep up with that. And so in order to survive, he switches into some easy subject, which may be some ethnic studies program or what have you. And so someone who could have gotten a first-rate education at a good college ends up getting a third-rate education at a top college, or ends up flunking out altogether. Put yourself in the position of a black kid who comes out of a ghetto school, and he's going through for 12 years with nothing but A's and B's, without a great deal of effort. And now he finds himself for the first time in his life in a predominantly white environment. And he finds that when he works twice as hard as he's ever worked, all he gets back for his work is a D. And that there is also a minority establishment, this is true not only of blacks, but minorities in general, establishment which tells him, yes, this is the racism on this campus, that the white power structure is trying to keep you down. And it has to have a certain plausibility to it. It would have had a certain plausibility to me had I come along in that era. Now, I was fortunate enough in one sense that having grown up in the South and then transferred to New York, I was shifted between different levels of education. And so I was a top student in my class in North Carolina, and then I was immediately the bottom student in my class in Harlem. And I was way behind whoever was next to the bottom, because the educational differences were just that great. Very painful period of adjustment. But there was no racial issue involved, since all the other kids who were ahead of me were all black. And so I got through that. And then for a second time in my life, I'd gone out on my own when I was 17. I didn't return to college full-time until I was about 25. For the second time in my life, I went into an environment that was very difficult compared to what I'd been used to. And once again, I was way behind. I was in danger of flunking out of school the first semester. And again, an enormous adjustment to make, but there was no one there to tell me, all these white professors have it in for you, and that's why you're doing badly. Because first of all, I had done badly in Harlem, and I'd overcome it. I was doing badly there, I overcame it. So you can understand how the student would find this plausible. I talked to a black man recently, a lawyer, who said when he was in law school, he was told when he first got there that Professor X never gives black students more than a C. and he got a B+. But there was great consternation because one of the myths had fallen. But it's truly criminal what goes on in terms of using and manipulating the students to serve all kinds of external purposes. No, but it's fascinating that I see this happening in all sorts of issues from Federal Reserve policies on across the board. That you say, here's this wonderful program, and it will do wonderful things. And the burden of proof is on others to show that it will not do those things. And no matter how long it's been going on, it's never long enough. If it failed, it just wasn't enough commitment. The budget wasn't big enough. Should have had a larger staff, wider powers. But there's never any sense of a burden of proof on you to say, when you've made this change that has caused such furor in this country and has gotten people at each other's throats, including people who have been allies in the past, such as blacks and the Jews, there is never any sense of a need for you to advance the empirical evidence to support what you've been doing.